And Coulter is continuing to slam Trump in the media because he hasn't built the wall yet. Look at what she said on Lou Dobbs' show.
Let's turn to, you called him a shallow, lazy ignoramus, just for the record, and now you seem to be making some sort of accord with him.
No,
before we go too far down.
I called him that during the campaign, and in Trump we trust. That was part of the reason.
And have quoted yourself ever since.
Yes, I have been. No, but that was part of the reason we trusted him. I mean, a switch changed with him. As I described in Chapter 2, yes, we might have wanted a more elegant person to make these arguments. We're voting for him for the policies. And then I realized...
Well, I sure as hell didn't. And millions of other Americans didn't want an elegant...
Again, was halfway through the sentence. And then you realize...
Hurry to the best part.
And then you realize an elegant person wouldn't have said the things he was saying. It was precisely that he was so coarse that allowed him to make these... say these... incredibly courageous things. He didn't care what Manhattan elites thought of him.
I can't tell if you're coming down for or against force, because then he said bravely.
As soon as he gets to the White House, suddenly all he wants is the approval of the Manhattan fancy people. He sure didn't care for the 18 months he was running. So the shallow, coarse ignoramus, yes, it was a selling point because he didn't care what people thought of him. Now all he wants is for Goldman Sachs to like him. Yeah, well, I don't know what happened, but that's a different president. I haven't changed.
Approbation.
Damn. See, here's the thing, Anne. That was the case from immediately when he stepped in the Oval Office, but you just realized it now. She's like, all he wants is Goldman Sachs to like him. Yeah, what gave it away when in the first couple weeks of his administration, he appointed fucking Gary Cohn and Steve Mnuchin? Did that give it away? That he's taking literal Goldman Sachs workers and appointing them in his administration. And then, by the way, they also wrote his tax plan, which gave massive tax breaks to corporations and massive breaks to Wall Street. His infrastructure bill even privatizes large swaths of our infrastructure and hands it over to Goldman Sachs. So what gave it away, Anne, that he's pro-Goldman Sachs? Was it all the appointees from Goldman Sachs? But that's the thing is, for the longest time, even after he appointed them, she didn't care or mention it, and she was still defending Trump. And it's only recently that she's not defending Trump. Why? That's the interesting part, because in the rest of that interview, she makes crystal clear. It's all because of the wall. It's all because of the wall. So before we give Coulter too much credit here for being woke and Coulter, for going against Goldman Sachs and Wall Street and Manhattan elites, just remember her real reason is, oh, he hasn't built the wall yet, and he's softer on immigration and all that stuff. And her case is, hey, he's allowed to build the wall without going through Congress, and he could just build it and argue the U.S. is under imminent attack from, immigrants and refugees, and that's why we need to build the wall, because it's in the War Powers Act, it's a matter of self-defense. And that argument would not hold up in court for a second. And it's sad that she doesn't know that. I think that she genuinely has convinced herself that argument is legit. That, Trump could just use his executive authority to build the wall and say we're under attack. Really? What's the response going to be when the evidence is presented in court that immigration from Mexico is net zero? We're under an imminent threat of war from Mexico. When Mexican immigrants, it's net zero coming into this country. It's just so stupid. And then you could obviously cite the statistics on what percentage of immigrants that come here are law-abiding citizens versus what percentage are criminals. And, of course, believe it or not, and there's a study recently from a right-wing outlet that proved this. I think it was Cato, so a libertarian-leaning outlet. They studied this in depth, and they found that undocumented immigrants and documented immigrants both have significantly lower crime rates than U.S. citizens. So they're less likely to be criminals, which is the opposite of Ann Coulter's entire philosophy is the immigrants, they're all fucking criminals and we got to kick them out and all that. Which it's just counterfactual. It's just empirically not true. But her argument is, let's ban them from coming into the country under the War Powers Act and build a wall under the War Powers Act, please. So Trump is actually right on the constitutional aspect of it in that he would need to go through Congress to get the wall approved, and he hasn't been able to do that yet. And now we're going to get to another story in a little bit where Trump is taking credit for the wall being built, even though there's just repairs going on at a different part in California on the southern border of a wall. it was passed in 2009, but he's taking credit for it now like it's his wall being built, probably because he knows he's not actually going to be able to get it passed through Congress. So he needs to take credit somehow for something. So he's like, yeah, see, my wall, tremendous, being built, unbelievable. I'm so great at this. But listen, on the Wall Street stuff, she's right. And, randomly, these kind of white nationalist-y type characters like Ann Coulter and Richard Spencer, randomly, they are against bombing Syria. Okay. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. That's my response to that. And other issue where they're not complete and utter morons is the trade deals. A lot of them are against the trade deals, and they're for, kind of rebuilding the middle class. But like I said, a broken clock is right twice a day. So when Ann Coulter goes out there and says, he's Goldman Sachs' bitch and he's the Manhattan elite's bitch, the answer is absolutely. You're right. But you're right for the wrong reasons. What she's saying is you have to reject the social agenda of those people. So in other words, you have to, be in favor of kicking out all the immigrants and building a wall, whereas the Manhattan elites, as she calls them, they are the counterbalancing force in the administration on those social issues. As much as I disagree with those, bigwig Wall Street insiders on economics, and I disagree with them on everything when it comes to economics, on social issues, they are the force that's been telling Trump, like, maybe don't be so anti-gay. Maybe don't be so anti-immigrant. So it's a little bit of a complex situation. Because then, like, for example, when Bannon was in the administration, Bannon was dead wrong on all the social stuff, and he was like, yeah, fuck all the immigrants. But Bannon on the economic stuff was like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be doing all these dumbass trade deals. So, you had the white nationalists who made more sense on economics, and you had the Wall Street elites who made more sense on the social issues. And it was like, competing forces going back and forth here. And just final point, I know I'm rambling on here in regards to Ann Coulter, but another thing is you go to her Twitter feed and you look at some of the statements she's made. When she talks about Manhattan elites, you and I hear that, and we, since we're in leftist circles, we hear like, okay, Wall Street insiders. She mentioned Goldman Sachs. That means Wall Street insiders and Wall Street's bad. That's how we think about it. And when Bernie says something like that, that's how he means it. Like, oh yes, Wall Street, rigging the economy, screwing over middle-class people. When Ann Coulter mentions Manhattan elites, and she mentions Goldman Sachs, it's code word. You know what it's code word for? The Jews. So now again, I understand if you're skeptical of that and you're like, no, hey man, come on, she probably be kind. Maybe she means it how you mean it and how Bernie means it. Ann Coulter means it how Bernie means it, please. No, and again, don't take my word for it. She has a recent history. It's come out more in recent years, but back, 5-10 years ago, you couldn't find an example of this. But there's a lot of sly, like, anti-Semitism. Like, the Jews are really controlling everything. And again, the Twitter circles that she runs in, that's what all of the rhetoric is. Oh, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. So when she says Manhattan elites and she talks about Goldman Sachs, she's not against them for the reasons we're against them. We're against them because, and it's not just the Jews, it's elites that are Christian, that are Jewish, that are whatever, who are rigging the economy and screwing over the middle class. She's focusing on them because it's, how those Jews are. So even though Ann is ultimately correct, if you read that comment at face value, that all he wants is Goldman Sachs approval, speaking about Trump, that's totally true. But she's right for the wrong reasons, and we need to point that out.